bit rainy today, so I've retreated down to the bottom of the garden in my little office down here, and it got me thinking about down the bottom of my garden about a song from a show I did. The show was called Dwr Caru, which means sweet water. And the reason the show was formed really was because I told a story to Nick Walker, the playwright, about a pump that is at the bottom of my garden. It's not actually technically right at the bottom of my garden, it's at the back. There's a long strip of land that runs along the back of our gardens. I live on a terrace, and at one end there is a pump, the far end from my house actually. But apparently I own that pump. It is on the deeds to the house, and I can claim 1/6 of the upkeep of the pump from all the residents on the terrace. Never had to do that. But interestingly, when we first moved here, the pump was not visible at all, couldn't see it. And I knew that there had been one, because it was on the deeds of the house. And not long after we moved in, one of the ladies from the village, one of the elders, knocked on my door in a bit of a state one night, in her dressing gown in fact, saying, "You have to get your pump back, Mary, you have to get your pump back." And I was a bit kind of like, well, I don't know what you mean. You know, she said basically the people at the end house had rather sneakily moved their garden fence just a couple of metres or so. So the pump was then actually in their garden, and the high fence had been put up, so I couldn't actually see it. And so I was slightly alarmed by this and thought, oh, what do I do? So I did actually end up go around and very nicely say to them, you know, it has been brought to my attention that actually that belongs to everybody, really, that pump. Originally people from the terrace would have drawn their water from it. Anyway, and there was a lot of banging and crashing that night, apparently, according to the woman who lives next door to the end house, and the pump was restored to the terrace the next day. Hurrah! So that's kind of really a bit of a long preamble into the song. But it sparked a whole thought about water and who owns it. And this show, Dwr Caru, was about a pump in a village belonging to a character in the show called Mary. And a company comes in from London wanting to market the water, make it beautiful, market it as beautiful, fresh Welsh spring water. But actually, was it Welsh, was it English? Because the pump was right on the border. And so the show really consisted of kind of going back through the layers of history associated with the pump, and covered a lot of history from the area. This was set in the borders, basically dug down through the earth, and discovered all these different historical things that happened. So this little piece of music was performed by the choir. There was a choir formed for the show, and this little piece of music we called divining, because it happened every time they were divining for the water, finding out, you know, digging down to find the water. And so this kind of happened in different guises each time it happened. So there's 4 little parts that layer up, and each time we started, we'd start it in a slightly different way. 2 of the lines were in Welsh and 2 were in English. So sometimes we started with the Welsh, sometimes with the English, depending on which side of the border we happened to be that time in the show. And so there were 4 different configurations, basically, I think, of how you could build it up. So I'm just going to go over each part, and then the recording of it I've got is actually from the show. It's a live recording, and so there is a little bit of audience noise going on. There's a lovely little line from a little boy actually halfway through you'll hear, wondering what's going on in the show. But I thought it sounded quite nice, so I thought I'd keep it in. So this is Divining from Dwr Caru, played by Nick Walker. I'll do the 2 English lines first, and then I'll do the 2 Welsh lines. And the Welsh lines, it's the same words as the English, but obviously in Welsh. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold, is our first line, and that was sung by the basses. So obviously it would be down an octave from there. So first line is, we've got 3 in a bar, 1, 2, 3. A water sweet, a water old. Let's try that. 1, 2, 3. A water sweet, a water old. Lovely. And then similar but not quite the same. A water buried, a water cold. Try that one. A water that one starts its ascent just a little bit sooner and goes one note higher. So first one again. A water sweet, a water old. Let's try that. A water sweet, a water old. Next line. A water buried, a water cold. A water buried, a water cold. So that's the first line, and say that one, I think the recording starts with that one. So on top of that, sopranos have a faster flowing line. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. So that actually, it's half as long, as the first line. So with a slightly different ending the second time through it. So you have to do 2 lots of that line for every one lot of the previous line. So, a water sweet, a water old. Let's try that one. A water sweet, a water old. And then, a water buried, a water cold. Try that. A water buried, a water cold. Then we do all that again. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. But we end a little bit higher, and there's a really nice chord, suspended chord to end on. 1, 2. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. A water sweet, a water old, a water buried, a water cold. So just watch where you breathe in that one, probably some little snatch breaths. So that's the fastest of them. So that's the 2 English lines, and they're sort of the 2 outer parts. And then in the middle we have the 2 Welsh lines. So the tenor line, Dwr Caru, Dwr hen, Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. And for that one we start low. Dwr Caru, Dwr hen. Let's try that. Dwr Caru, Dwr hen. And then the next time. Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. And that one all the way through. Dwr Caru, Dwr hen, Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. So nice and kind of rich underneath in the middle there. So, and then on top of that, the same words in Welsh for the altos. And we just have a little rising and falling. Dwr Caru, Dwr hen, Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. So it's just the same little up and down line 2 times. So we'll try that line by line. Dwr Caru, Dwr hen. Let's try. Dwr Caru, Dwr hen. Same tune, different words. Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. Dwr clavedig, Dwr anwydd. And then And as I say, they can be built up in any order, starting with English, starting with Welsh. The recording, I say, it starts with both the English ones, starts with the low line and the sopranos, and then the tenor, and then finally the alto, and it just gradually fills it out. And we would always come to the climax. It would kind of gradually get louder all the way through, come to the climax at the moment they broke through with the drill and got to the next level down in the ground and discovered the next thing that was going to happen in the story. So this is Divining from Dwr Caru, Sweetwater by Nick Walker, and performed on the clip here by the choir at Walcott Hall in a lovely dome venue, the geodesic dome tent belonging to Sheep Music, and we performed it in 4 different places. There's some details about that at the end, and yeah, thank you very much. See you next time. Water, sweeter water.